came here chasing a better life too, huh? The so-called land of opportunity. Liberty City. Skyscrapers, suits, dirty money, and broken dreams. Everyone's got a story here, but most don't end well. Still, you keep pushing. Because maybe, just maybe, there's something waiting at the end of the grind. A little peace, a little rest. Well, I've got something for you. Give me your ears for a while, and I'll give you quiet. No noise, no pressure, no past, just you. And the sound of the city fading away. Liberty City never sleep, but you will. Hi, comrade. Today we will discover the story of Lenny Cormack, a man who has spent his entire life navigating the unforgiving streets of Liberty City, where survival isn't just about strength, but knowing how to play the game. Lenny grew up in the shadows of South Bohan, watching as power shifted hands in dimly lit bars and back alley deals. He learned early that Liberty City is a place where loyalty is worth less than a stack of cash, and where every friendship is one bullet away from betrayal. By the time he turned 18, he had already built a reputation, a fixer, a problem solver, someone you call when things go sideways and you need them set right without asking too many questions. Tonight, the story begins in Hove Beach, where Lenny leans against the railing overlooking the dark waves of the Humboldt River. He has a job to finish, one that could secure his future or bury him under the towering skyline of Algonquin. The deal was supposed to be simple: a package pickup near Francis International Airport and a quiet delivery to a discreet penthouse near Middle Park East. But in Liberty City, nothing ever goes according to plan. As the neon lights flicker and the distant hum of traffic fills the air, Lenny prepares himself for what's to come. Because in Liberty City there are only two kinds of people: the ones who make things happen and the ones who get swallowed by the streets. Let's begin. The rain-soaked night draped Liberty City like a velvet shroud, hiding its sins in the refracted glow of neon. In the heart of South Bohan, where the pavement bore scars of past brawls and broken dreams, Lenny Cormack navigated familiar streets with a practiced nonchalance. Born and bred in these unforgiving alleyways, Lenny had long since learned that survival here was a confluence of cunning, muscle, and sheer grit. Tonight, as the city exhaled a mist of tension and anticipation, he felt that familiar thrill, the calm before the storm. Lenny's journey began at an old graffiti-tagged diner on the corner of Kingsbridge Avenue, a relic of a more innocent time when Liberty City's dream still had a chance at redemption. The diner's neon sign buzzed erratically, and inside, the smell of stale coffee and fried bacon wove itself into the night's fabric. Seated in a corner booth with a view of the rain-blurred street, Lenny reviewed the details of his latest job on a battered notebook. It was a simple pickup, or so it was supposed to be. A discreet handoff in the back alleys of Hove Beach where shadows merged with the crash of restless waves along the shoreline. A few hours earlier, word had come through confidential channels that a high-rolling client in Algonquin required a fixer's touch. The package, though its contents were shrouded in mystery, held enough promise and danger to ensure that every move would be scrutinized. Lenny's reputation had been forged in these murky dealings where a miscalculation could mean the difference between a tidy profit and a bullet in the back. He scribbled a reminder in his notebook to check his gear one last time, his roughened fingers gliding over scars that each told a story of previous nights much like this one. Stepping out of the diner, Lenny merged with the city's ceaseless traffic. The rain turned the pavement into a mirror reflecting the blurred contours of Liberty City's skyline. He drove through South Bohan's winding roads, past dilapidated apartment complexes and shuttered storefronts that whispered of better days. Every intersection, every flickering street lamp witnessed the city's ongoing ballet of despair and defiance. The urban sprawl pulsed with life even in its decay, and as Lenny approached Hove Beach, the unmistakable rhythm of crashing waves intermingled with distant sirens and murmured conversations. At Hove Beach, the mood shifted. The boardwalk glistened under the soft luminescence of antique streetlights, and clusters of night wanderers moved like ephemeral ghosts along its edges. Lenny parked his aging sedan in a narrow, shadowed lot behind a run-down bar aptly named The Siren's Call. Here, on this fringe between the roaring ocean and the eternal city, deals were often struck far from prying eyes. He exited his car and walked briskly toward a discreet meeting spot, a weathered staircase leading to a narrow alley where authorized figures exchanged information like currency. In that secluded corridor, the ambient sound of rain became a constant percussion in Lenny's ears. A single figure awaited him, tall, dressed in a dark overcoat, face partially concealed by a wide-brimmed hat. Without preamble, the stranger passed Lenny a small envelope. His voice was low and measured. "For Algonquin, watch your back, Cormac." The simplicity of the instruction carried a weight that resonated deep within him. In Liberty City, every message bore the risk of betrayal. Every handshake concealed a potential trap. With the envelope secured in his inner jacket pocket, Lenny retraced his steps back to his sedan. The journey from Hove Beach to Algonquin was more than mere geography. It was a voyage through the layers of Liberty City's diverse districts. He drove along the coastal roads, where the rhythmic crash of ocean waves gave way to the metallic hum of traffic in the upper boroughs. Passing through Francis International Airport's vicinity, with its sprawling runways and cold, sterile architecture, he could not help but reflect on the contrast between the city's pristine facades and the raw, unvarnished underbelly he navigated each night. Arriving in Algonquin, the pulse of Liberty City quickened. Here, in this district where wealth and decay coexisted in a delicate, lethal balance, Lenny parked near a high-rise that housed the penthouse slated for the handoff. The building, with its angular glass facade and an air of clinical modernity, was a silent testament to the city's fractured divisions. As he stepped out of his car, the envelope felt warmer in his pocket, whether from the pressure of its contents or from the surge of adrenaline coursing through him. He could not tell. Before he could ascend the narrow service elevator to the designated floor, Lenny paused on the stairwell, his thoughts turning inward. In Liberty City, every step, every decision was a gamble. Memories of past encounters, friendships betrayed in smoky backrooms, alliances shattered on rain-drenched streets, flashed like lightning in his mind. Still, there was resolve in his eyes. He was a product of this city, tempered by adversity and hardened by its relentless demands. Inside the penthouse, the ambiance was as opulent as it was indifferent. Polished marble floors, minimalist decor, and vast windows that offered a panoramic view of Liberty City's fractured skyline framed a space that was as isolated as it was secure. Lenny located the meeting room, a private lounge where the client awaited. The room was dimly lit, save for the ambient glow filtering through heavy curtains, casting long shadows that danced on the walls in sync with the rhythm of the city. Outside, he finally met the client, a sharply dressed man with a calculating gaze who introduced himself only as Mr. Hawthorne. The air between them was thick with unspoken terms. This was not a casual conversation, but a transaction laden with implications. Mr. Hawthorne's voice was smooth, yet carried an undercurrent of urgency as he explained that the envelope contained not merely a financial instrument, but secrets that reached into the highest echelons of Algonquin's elite, the stakes already high, now pressed further against the delicate facade of order that the modern towers of Algonquin attempted to uphold. For hours, in that muted lounge high above the city, Lenny absorbed every detail, every nuance of the deal. In the interplay of whispered confidences and glances exchanged with guarded suspicion, he sensed the beginning of a storm that would ripple across Liberty City. Each revelation in that confined space added another layer to a conspiracy that threatened to dismantle power structures and expose the hidden corruption entrenched in every brick and boulevard of the city. When the meeting drew to a close, Lenny stepped out into the cool night once more. The city had changed in subtle, immeasurable ways over the course of those hours. His mission was clear now. He was to carry these dangerous secrets into the folds of Liberty City's murky future, where every district, from South Bohan to Algonquin, from Hove Beach to Middle Park East, would feel the tremors of this revelation. As he drove away under a sky streaked with the first hints of dawn, Lenny couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was merely the opening act of a much larger drama, a symphony of betrayal, redemption, and the constant, inescapable fight for survival that is the heartbeat of Liberty City. And so, with the weight of his choices pressing like the humid night air against his skin, Lenny Cormack merged back into the labyrinth of the city, ready to face whatever shadows the day, or the night, had yet to cast. Lenny stepped out of the penthouse into the pre-dawn chill with the weight of Mr. Hawthorne's revelations burning in his mind. The elegance of Algonquin's glass towers was a stark counterpoint to the grim reality he'd just navigated, and, as he descended the sleek service elevator, his pulse quickened with the knowledge that nothing in Liberty City ever came without a cost. Outside, the rain-dampened pavement shimmered with streaks of neon from distant billboards, and the quiet hum of early traffic underscored the fragile calm before the inevitable chaos. Every step away from that polished enclave felt like leaving, behind a brief and dangerous truce, a momentary pause before the true storm hit. The drive back was a blur of reflection and foreboding. Lenny's sedan wound its way through the labyrinthine streets of South Bohan, where the remnants of past glories decayed under harsh streetlights and the scars of old rivalries marred every corner. In the rearview mirror, fragments of his memories merged with the city's dark silhouettes, forgotten alleyways, defunct storefronts, and the melancholic hum of a metropolis caught between opulence and decay. He couldn't shake the image of Mr. Hawthorne's steely gaze as he spoke of secrets so incendiary they could shatter the entrenched powers of Liberty City. By the time Lenny reached the outskirts where the industrial district blurred into the crumbling relics of bureaucracy, the sky was painted with the first hints of a reluctant sunrise. Here, amid the rust and ruin of what was once a thriving hub and broker, he pulled into a parking lot shrouded in shadows. A battered warehouse served as his safe house, a forgotten structure repurposed by those who still believed in fighting from the fringes. The building's exterior bore layers of peeling paint and cryptic tags, each one a monument to clandestine meetings and whispered alliances of a bygone era. Inside the safe house, the atmosphere was thick with tension and anticipation. Faded, maps with red-inked roots were tacked onto cracked walls, and a scattering of old computer parts and handwritten notes testified to the persistent effort to reclaim a city drowning in corruption. Lenny secured the envelope and the damning documents on a rickety table, running his calloused fingers over their worn edges, as if the tactile memory of each page could bestow greater clarity. His mind raced with the implications of the evidence. Names of high-powered executives, coded communications, and photographs taken in shuttered corners of Liberty City, from the teeming streets of Hove Beach to the glimmering facades of Middle Park East. Every detail was a thread in a larger tapestry of deceit, one that promised both revolution and retribution. Before Lenny could deliberate his next move, a subtle noise at the door snapped his focus to the present danger. The soft click of a lock, turning, and the muted thump of footsteps across the cold concrete corridor signaled that he wasn't as alone as he'd hoped. Instinctively, Lenny slid behind a stack of old crates, his gaze fixed on the narrow gap where the door met the wall. Outside, the darkness shifted. A pair of dark silhouettes moved with deliberate caution along the perimeter, their steps synchronized in a rhythm as familiar as the city's heartbeat. They were not residents of the safe house, but unwelcome interlopers determined to intercept the evidence that had sparked so many whispers of uprising. Heart pounding, Lenny reached for the concealed sidearm tucked into his jacket. The tension in his limbs was both a warning and a promise. He had built his life in these very moments of raw danger, and he would not allow his hard-earned revelations to fall into enemy hands. The muffled conversation outside grew more urgent. Voices low and clipped exchanged coded phrases that hinted at betrayal. "Druzia, they're here," one muttered, and Lenny's grip tightened around his weapon. Even as adrenaline surged through him, his mind raced through contingencies honed over years of surviving in Liberty City's underbelly. Maintaining his silent vigil, Lenny monitored through a narrow crack in the crates as the door handle jiggled ever so slightly. The intruders had not yet barged in. Perhaps they were waiting for a signal or searching for a weak point in his makeshift fortification. In that suspended moment, the rain from outside seeped into his thoughts, reminding him of every promise he'd made when he first stepped onto these treacherous streets. The evidence was not just a bargaining chip. It was a spark to ignite the flames of change. And if the city's underworld sought to snuff it out before the revolution could begin, they'd have to contend with someone who'd survived the darkest nights of Liberty City. With a swift, calculated decision, Lenny moved. Slipping from his hiding spot, he crept toward a side exit, an emergency door partially obscured by age and neglect. As he limped toward the exit, he heard a crash as one of the intruders finally forced open the main door, their shouts echoing in the vast emptiness of the warehouse. In the chaos that ensued, Lenny's plan activated like a trap. He set off. A small diversion, a clatter of metal from a stacked shovel leaning against a crate, that sent two of his unwelcome guests stumbling toward the sound, leaving the entrance momentarily unguarded. Heart hammering, Lenny dashed out into the labyrinthine back corridors of the warehouse, the evidence tucked securely into his inner jacket pocket. The corridors were a maze, windows shattered long ago, revealing flickers of the neon-drenched city beyond. Every step he took was measured, each footfall a defiant whisper against those who sought to silence the truth. Behind him, the cacophony of the ambush, the clanging of metal, the echo of shouted orders, receded as he merged with the maze, his silhouette blending into the urban decay of brokers' forgotten corners. Bursting through a secondary exit, Lenny emerged back onto a rain-drenched street lined with deserted factories and abandoned warehouses. The night air was filled with the distant sirens of pursuing vehicles and the murmurs of a city that never truly slept, even when its inhabitants hid behind crumbling walls. With his breath coming in sharp, crisp gasps, Lenny pulled out his secure phone and tapped out a coded message to his trusted provider. Package relocated. Repeat, into the fire. Coordinates pending. The familiar hum of encrypted chatter, confirmed that his allies were mobilizing. A patchwork of rebels, fixers, and underground informants scattered across the neighborhoods of Liberty City, each ready to fan the flames of a revolution that could no longer be contained. Now on the run, Lenny merged into the nocturnal arteries of the city. His journey took him along familiar boulevards, Kingsbridge Avenue and South Bohan, now eerily quiet in the pre-dawn drizzle, the humid stretches near Hove Beach, where the lazy lapping of ocean waves disguised the urgency of his flight, and even the dim corridors near Francis International Airport, where the metallic behemoth of air travel loomed as an indifferent sentinel over the city's secrets. Every district of Liberty City pulsed with quiet menace and hidden promise, each one a silent witness to the unfolding drama. In the reflective puddles of a narrow side street, Lenny paused to gather his thoughts, the steady drip of rain joining the cadence of his resolute heartbeat. Despite the chaos and the threat pressed upon him from every angle, a determined smile touched his lips. He had danced with danger before, and tonight, the flames of revolution were burning bright enough to light the darkest alleys of this fractured city. For Lenny, every drop of rain, every shattered neon sign, and every whispered secret was a clarion call to keep fighting no matter the cost. Liberty City was his home, with all its scars and splendors, and he would not let it be swallowed by corruption without a battle cry. The city lay sprawling ahead, a mosaic of hope, despair, and the indomitable will to rise from its embers. As the distant rumble of engines and the first pale strokes of dawn approached, Lenny tightened his grip on his jacket and stepped onto the rain-soaked pavement once more. His journey was far from over, and the fire that now blazed within him promised that the revolution was only just beginning. And so, in the cold pre-dawn light, amid the haunting echoes of retreating footsteps and the symphony of a city reborn, in chaos, Leonard Lenny Cormack plunged deeper into the fire, undaunted, unyielding, and ready to reshape the fate of Liberty City one clandestine step at a time. Lenny drove on, the steady drumming of rain against his windshield and the blurred city lights coalescing into a hypnotic rhythm that both calmed and unnerved him. Every drop carried with it the weight of Liberty City's hidden sins, and as his sedan wound along familiar avenues of South Bohan and dipped into dimly lit corridors of Middle Park East, he felt as if the city itself was whispering secrets meant only for those brave enough to listen. The memory of the warehouse ambush and the desperate scramble for the evidence mingled with every thought, convincing him that his fight for the truth had only just begun. As the cityscape transitioned from the crumbling facades of Broker to the glass towers of Algonquin in the distance, his secure burner phone buzzed with a coded message. Nexus and Broker. Meet at the old textile factory. Trust no one. The terse note sent a surge of adrenaline through him and compelled Lenny to alter his course. He eased his sedan into a narrow, rain-slicked lane where the neon glow of dilapidated signs and flickering street lamps cast kaleidoscopic patterns onto the asphalt. Every turn and every stop was laden with the potential for ambush, yet he pressed on, determined to rendezvous with his underground allies. Under the ghostly luminescence of a half-broken billboard, Lenny parked near a weathered building once known for its thriving mills. The old textile factory now stood as a crumbling monument to better days, its graffiti-marred walls and shattered windows sheltering those who still dared to resist the relentless tide of corruption. Moving silently along darkened corridors, he found the hidden meeting room, a small makeshift chamber behind a rusted metal door where a motley group of rebels had gathered. The air inside was thick with cigarette smoke, whispered conversations, and the palpable scent of urgent rebellion. Indeed, that secret haven, Voices rose in low, strained tones as they discussed the next move. The room pulsed with the raw energy of defiant hope and bitter resignation. A young woman with sharp eyes and a gravely whispered accent, someone known simply as Mira, stepped forward, her words cutting through the haze. "Lenny, we can't let them silence you now. The evidence you carry isn't just a bargaining chip, it's a spark. We're close to hacking the feed at the Algonquin broadcast tower. We'll expose every crooked deal, every lie. But we need you to lead this assault." Her words resonated with the urgency of a city on the edge, and as the murmurs of agreement swelled around him, Lenny felt the heavy mantle of responsibility settle firmly on his shoulders. Plans were hastily drawn on splintered paper, routes mapped out in red ink on faded blueprints of Liberty City's underbelly. They spoke of piercing the fortified walls of corporate complacency, of storming a media hub in a bid to unleash a torrent of truth upon the unsuspecting masses. Every detail was fraught with risk, every second ticking towards a showdown that promised to be as brutal as it was transformative. Even as they spoke, the distant wail of sirens and the rhythmic clatter of approaching boots served as a grim reminder that the powers aligned against them were tightening their grip. Outside, the safe meeting room, the night pulsed with the restless energy of a city on the brink of upheaval. Liberty City streets, long accustomed to the relentless interplay of wealth and decay, now vibrated with murmurs of resistance. Every shattered storefront in Broker, every rain-carpeted street in Hove Beach, every imposing high-rise in Algonquin bore witness to an impending revolution. The corrupt elite huddled in their fortified offices, unaware that beneath their cold, calculated exteriors, the spirit of rebellion was gathering momentum like a tidal wave. Leaving the clandestine room, with a newfound resolve, Lenny stepped back into the rain-soaked maze of the city. The rhythmic patter of droplets on concrete mingled with the distant sound of protest chants and the restless rustle of movement in alleyways. His destination was the broadcast tower, a monolithic beacon that loomed over Algonquin, its silent presence belying the power it held over the narrative of the city. Each mile along the crooked roads, each perilous intersection, echoed with the collective heartbeat of a population ready to reclaim its voice. Navigating through narrow lanes and dodging the intermittent glare of headlights, he recalled Mira's words as if they were etched into his very soul. This was not merely about leaking information. It was about shattering the oppressive silence that had long stifled the hearts of Liberty City's people. The evidence in his pocket was a promise, one that could ignite a chain reaction leading to a torrent of change. As he accelerated toward his destination, the landscape around him became a blur of concrete and ambition. The city, scarred by years of manipulation and neglect, now shimmered with the fragile light of potential. The atmosphere was electrified with expectancy. Along the deserted arcs of the freeway, under the modern glare of urban renewal colliding with ancient rundown structures, Lenny's every sense was on high alert. Nearby, a covert informant, an old friend known by the code name Drake, had already secured a perch atop a crumbling overpass, his vigilant gaze scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. The silent communication between them was instantaneous. They were part of a network that had survived countless storms, and tonight, they would stand together against the engulfing darkness. As the distant rumble of engines and murmured radio chatter faded behind him, Lenny's focus narrowed into a singular determination. The mission was clear: infiltrate the broadcast center, override its secure systems, and ensure the unambiguous dissemination of the explosive evidence. Every step was a calculated risk, every maneuver a testament to the endless battle for truth in a city built on lies. The once quiet reverie of dawn began its tentative descent into day, and with it, the streets of Liberty City were poised to witness a reckoning that would resound for years to come. In that final electric moment before the breakthrough, Lenny glanced one last time at the horizon, a scarred skyline illuminated by the relentless pulse of neon and ambition. He clenched his jaw, the cold certainty of his purpose etched into every line of his weary face. With a deep breath that mingled with the moist air and the quiet roar of a city awakening to its own potential, he pressed forward into the uncertain light of a new day, carrying with him the hopes of a revolution destined to reshape every fractured street, every forgotten neighborhood, and every soul that dared to dream of justice in Liberty City. Lenny moved stealthily along the cracked sidewalks as the towering broadcast center loomed ahead, a modern fortress of steel and glass set against the storied skyline of Algonquin. The building exuded an oppressive aura, its reflective surfaces capturing the feeble light of dawn and echoing the sinister vigilance of countless security cameras. Every step he took brought a mix of adrenaline-fueled determination and a palpable awareness of the monumental risks ahead. He recalled Mira's insistence, the urgent murmurs within the safe house, and the lives that would be transformed should the leak succeed. Nearing the perimeter, Lenny crouched behind a rusted dumpster in a narrow alley off Kingsbridge Avenue. Rainwater pooled at his feet, mirroring the digital glow of nearby neon advertisements celebrating corporate triumphs. A cruel juxtaposition in a city where power had long been hoarded by a select few. With practiced precision, he tapped a button on a concealed remote. A low-frequency hum signaled that he had temporarily disabled the external motion sensors along the building's wall, granting him a narrow window to insert himself undetected. The urban darkness and the lingering drizzle became his allies as he melted into the shadows. Inside a service entrance at the back of the tower, Lenny found the corridor doused in harsh fluorescent light. The sound of distant murmurs and clacking keyboards hinted at the nerve center of the building, a hub from which the corporate narrative was broadcast to every corner of Liberty City. He pressed himself against the smooth wall, moving with a measured caution born of years navigating urban labyrinths. Every step resonated with the memory of past betrayals and the hope that fueled his rebellious heart. His gloved hand slid along the cool surface of a hidden panel, and with a discreet press, he unlocked the door to an internal stairwell that would lead him closer to his objective. As he ascended the stairwell, each creak of wood beneath his purposeful tread was a reminder that time was sparse. In the dim confines of the building's lower levels, he encountered an unexpected obstacle. A pair of patrolling security officers conversing in low voices about routine checks and shift changes. Lenny flattened himself against the wall, heart pounding, blending into the shadows until their footsteps receded down the hall. Those fleeting moments were enough to remind him that trust was a luxury in these corridors of power. It was enough to steel him further for the battle ahead. At the top of the stairwell, the corridor widened into a bustling control center where banks of monitors displayed live feeds from every angle of the building's interior. The rhythmic tapping of keys formed a staccato backdrop against which Lenny advanced. His plan was simple in theory, yet nearly impossible in practice. Breach the secure terminal, hack into the broadcasting system, and force live transmission of the evidence. He carried unmasking the rot that had festered at the highest echelons of Liberty City. Every passing second raised both the stakes and the tension, as the very structure of power pulsed with an unsympathetic indifference to the cries for justice echoing outside its walls. A steady hand guided Lenny to a secluded corner behind a row of aging servers and discarded cables. Here, he set his evidence aside and produced a slim hacking device, a gadget of his own design that utilized both custom software and a direct connection to the building's network. The device whirred to life, and its small screen illuminated cryptic lines of code. In the quiet hum of the server room, every beep, every flicker on the screen was a heartbeat measured against the pace of a revolution that could either flicker out or blaze into undeniable reality. Outside, through narrow windows, he caught glimpses of the city transforming in a swell of early morning hues. Liberty City was awakening, ignorant of the impending storm that would soon tear through its carefully constructed facades. Somewhere on a battered overpass nearby, his contact, Drake, continued to watch the horizon, a silent guardian ensuring that Lenny's digital intrusion would not go unnoticed by hostile forces. The connection was tenuous but vital, a lifeline woven from dark networks and midnight rendezvous. Every moment Lenny spent at the terminal was both a defiance of the established order and a desperate bid to empower the restless masses. As he navigated through layers of security, bypassing protocols and unlocking locked files with rapid keystrokes, Lenny's focus sharpened into a singular clarity. The evidence, a culmination of countless clandestine investigations, whispered rumors, and stolen truths, would soon become an irreversible tide that the corrupt elite could neither ignore nor contain. With each successful hack, layers of secrecy peeled away like the forgotten skin of a dying empire. Marcus had once believed in survival at any cost. Now Lenny believed in the transformative power of truth. In the dim light of the control center, when the first banner of digitally transmitted evidence splashed across unauthorized broadcast frequencies, a shiver of triumph coursed through him. The damning files, the names, the incriminating photos, the minutes of backroom deals, flooded every available screen. At that moment, the corporate narrative was hijacked, and the citizens of Liberty City, from the crowded corridors of South Bohan to the gleaming towers of Algonquin, would see the corruption laid bare. A sudden surge of voices, alarms, and cascading red lights signaled that his actions had not gone unnoticed for long. The building trembled with the collective energy of impending retribution, and as Lenny began the process of retreat, he could hear the panicked shouts of security scrambling through the corridors. In the chaotic orchestrations of a collapsing system, he retrieved his device and tucked his evidence safely within his jacket. With the digital revolution already in motion, every second now counted in the race to escape. He retraced his steps, melding once again with the labyrinth of corridors and stairwells, his mind already plotting the next phase. The mission had set a fire in the heart of Liberty City, a spark destined to kindle into an uncontrollable inferno of change. As he reached the service entrance and slipped out into the wet pre-dawn streets, Lenny felt the remnants of danger and the promise of a new awakening intertwined in every breath of the liquefied urban air. His eyes, heavy with both exhaustion and resolve, scanned the horizon for Drake's signal, a subtle nod that the battle wasn't over yet. Outside, amid the cacophony of blaring sirens and the hurried shouts of a disrupted order, Liberty City stirred in anticipation. With the stolen secrets now echoing across the airwaves, the citizens had unwittingly become actors in a grand rebellion. Lenny merged into the waking throng, his form dissolving into a mosaic of determined faces and busy street corners, carrying with him the hope that even in the darkest alleys and behind the highest towers, truth would prevail. The revolution had been set in motion, and every rain-soaked step forward was a testament to the enduring spirit of those who believed that even a fractured city could rise again. The broadcast had set uncanny energy into motion. As the first light of day broke over the jagged skyline of Liberty City, Lenny moved like a shadow through the urban maze, every footstep echoing with a mix of urgency and cautious optimism. The evidence he had stolen blazed on every unauthorized screen, its damning truth now splintering the veneer of power that had long suffocated the city. From the bustling avenues of South Bohan to the sleek corridors of Algonquin, citizens poured into the streets, their voices rising in angry unison. Protests erupted with a raw fervor, marches coalescing along sidewalks and over bridges as long-suppressed lives demanded to be seen and heard. In an abandoned warehouse near Middle Park East, a council of rebels, activists, and disillusioned insiders gathered amidst peeling walls and shattered glass. The air was charged with a desperate hope, a promise that the corruption woven into Liberty City's fabric had finally met its reckoning. Leaders, whose names had once been muted whispers, in back alleys, now stood brave under flickering fluorescent lights, mapping out the chaos and opportunity that the leak had birthed. Lenny's hack was the catalyst. Now the city was bristling with the desire to reclaim its stolen future. Navigating the labyrinth of twisted back streets, Lenny observed the city's metamorphosis. On every corner, faces once hardened by indifference softened with determination, while the relentless clamor of protest echoed against concrete and steel. In Hove Beach, deserted boardwalks transformed into impromptu meeting places, where groups huddled together to plan, to resist, and to defy the omnipresent surveillance of those who once controlled their destiny. Sirens wailed in the distance as law enforcement scrambled to respond, but even their rigid formation seemed powerless against the swelling tide of discontent. Yet amid the awakening, danger lurked with equal ferocity. The corporate oligarchs and government cronies, caught off guard by the surge of public outrage, began mobilizing their private security forces, a desperate, violent countermeasure intended to reassert control. In the underbelly of Liberty City, in grimy corridors that had long sheltered secrets, hidden agents of the old regime activated a network of informants and mercenaries. Their orders were clear: silence the insurgents before their unified chorus could upend the established order. The stark lights of armored vehicles cut erratic paths along the avenues as a calculated response to quell the spark Lenny had ignited. But as the city simmered with escalating tension, so too did the resolve of its people. Lenny, moving swiftly through rain-slicked alleys, joined a safe passage lined with boarded-up storefronts that had become symbols of resistance. There, in a nondescript building tucked away in a forgotten corner of Broker, his trusted network awaited. Over a hurried exchange of coded words, plans were redrawn for the next offensive. This time not merely a data breach or a silent hack, but an all-out mobilization intended to wrest power from the corrupt elite. Each whisper and every clandestine meeting imbued the rebellion with new momentum, uniting disparate groups under a singular, audacious purpose: to expose and dismantle the systemic rot entrenched in every institution. In that volatile liminality, between night and day, Lenny felt the profound weight of his choices. The hack was only the beginning. The torrent of unveiled corruption had laid bare the misdeeds of a city that had long betrayed its own. Now wasn't the time to hide or hesitate. This was the moment to propel the revolution forward. With his heart pounding like the relentless tap of urban rain and his mind racing with strategies yet unimagined, he slipped back into the throng. Every step he took on those rain-drenched streets became a silent vow, a promise that Liberty City, for all its scars and shattered dreams, would rise from the ashes of its past to forge a future defined by truth, unity, and unyielding resilience. Lenny pressed on through the chaos, the reverberating tumult of rebel shouts and clanging metal echoing in his ears. With every step along the rain-slick concrete, he felt the fierce pulse of Liberty City intensify, as though the city itself was awakening to a long-forgotten call for justice. Amid the swirling masses of protesters and scattered glimpses of armed private security, Lenny wove his way through labyrinthine backstreets and forgotten alleys, each one a silent testament to the city's brutal history. The unauthorized broadcast had not only exposed deep-rooted corruption, it had ignited something intangible within every soul, sparking the determination to reclaim their stolen future. In the crowded thoroughfares of South Bohan, where shattered storefronts and flickering neon provided a grim backdrop, the people marched together as one. The air was thick with a mix of adrenaline and hope, punctuated by the rhythmic cadence of protest chants that resonated off decaying brick walls. Banners bearing slogans like "Truth will prevail" and "No more silence" fluttered in the gusts of wind. Lenny's eyes darted from determined faces to the looming shadow of armored vehicles patrolling the streets in a desperate bid to reassert the old order. The cacophony of resistance was both inspiring and ominous, a clear sign that the established powers were scrambling against the rising tide of dissent. As he navigated from one district to another, Lenny recalled how the broadcast had disrupted the carefully curated facades of Algonquin's glittering towers. In neighborhoods formerly bound by cautious order, free public spaces were now transformed into stages for raw, unfiltered outrage. In Hove Beach, for example, the familiar boardwalk had become a meeting ground for an eclectic mix of activists, students, blue-collar workers, even disillusioned corporate employees. And in every whispered conversation, there was a mutual understanding of the stakes involved. Amid the clamor, Lenny's mission loomed large in his mind: to ensure that the revolutionary spark he had set in motion continued to kindle the fires of change, rather than being smothered by the heavy hand of retaliation. Moving deeper into the urban grid, Lenny diverted into narrow, winding streets behind Middle Park East. Here the remnants of faded graffiti and splintered fire escapes served as both markers of the past and symbols of persistent defiance. The subdued light of early morning rendered the darkness almost tangible, a murmur of conspiracies and survival etched into every shadow. He reached a secluded subway entrance, a place frequented by rebels seeking shelter and covert connections. Descending into the underbelly of the city, Lenny found a brief haven among a network of tunnels that once ferried commuters and now carried whispers of revolution. In the subterranean gloom, he exchanged terse, coded greetings with a few trusted figures, veterans of countless street battles who recognized the urgency in his eyes. In a particularly narrow part of the tunnel, he paused to catch his breath and recalibrate his mission. His thoughts wandered briefly to Mira and the resilient cohorts whose voices had joined the insurgent chorus. The realization was inescapable. This was bigger than any single act of defiance. The evidence he had broadcast, the cascading revelations displayed on every hijacked screen across the city, had punctured the veil of deceit long maintained by the powerful. Every name exposed, every treacherous secret laid bare, was a rallying cry for those who had suffered in silence. Liberty City was fracturing at its seams, and the domino effect of systemic exposure was just beginning to unsettle the established regimes. Emerging from the subway's echoing tunnels back onto rain-washed streets, Lenny sensed a palpable shift in the city's rhythm. The angry, determined clamor of protest had given way to a more measured yet no less fervent campaign of resistance. In Broker, where stark industrial decay met the raw energy of a populist outcry. The rebel network was reorganizing in real time, hiding in plain sight within an abandoned factory complex. A motley assembly of citizens was setting up communication arrays, old computers, repurposed radios, and even salvaged satellite dishes, designed to keep the movement connected and the truth unaltered by the authorities' attempts at censorship. Outside, the roar of approaching security vehicles grew louder, and the tension in the air became almost electric, as if each raindrop carried the promise of further upheaval. Lenny hurriedly recalibrated a portable device, scanning for the latest updates from his contacts. Drake's eyes on the distant outskirts, Mira's directives for the next phase, and urgent signals from fringe cells scattered throughout the city. The messages were terse, laden with a sense of relentless urgency. Relocate, regroup, and prepare for what would be the most decisive push yet. Every coded instruction reminded him that the battle was not just in the physical streets, but in the very digital arteries that connected every rebel heart in Liberty City. He knew that with every advancement, the enemy's countermeasures would intensify. The corporate oligarchs and corrupt political elites were not going to yield without a ferocious, unsparing backlash. Reports of skirmishes on major thoroughfares and gunfire echoing in once safe neighborhoods confirmed his worst fears. Yet, even amid the uncertainty and mounting peril, there was an inextinguishable flame of resolve burning within him, a conviction that the price of truth was worth every sacrifice. The evidence was not merely digital data, it was the blood, sweat, and tears of countless individuals who had dared to dream of a fairer city. As the sky lightened with the soft hues of approaching dawn, the chaos of night gave way to a kind of grim determination. Lenny emerged onto a busy avenue near Francis International Airport, merging with the restless crowd whose collective spirit was a testament to the revolution in full swing. In that critical moment, every face he saw, scarred by hardship but alight with an indomitable spark, reinforced the understanding that Liberty City was transforming from within. The era of silent complicity was over. A new chapter was being written in the torrential rain, on the shattered streets, and in the hearts of those who chose to risk everything for truth. With each cautious step into the uncertain daylight, Lenny embraced the role fate had carved for him. His journey through shadow and storm, from the hidden corners of rebellious subways to the high-tech nerve centers of corporate power, had ignited a fire that promised to reshape the destiny of Liberty City. And as the determined chorus of voices echoed down every rain-drenched boulevard, Lenny knew that the revolution was far from over. Its true battle had only just begun. Lenny pushed forward through the dissipating night, every step weighted by the throbbing impulse of revolution. The city, wild, indomitable, steeped in decades of calculated corruption, seemed to tremble beneath a rising tide of unrest. Neon reflections danced on rain-slicked sidewalks as he navigated back into the urban labyrinth with a heart both racing and resolutely calm. Around him, Liberty City was metamorphosing. Protests had burst into full bloom in South Bohan, and the once sound, orderly pulse of Algonquin was now punctuated by cries for change. Every street corner exuded tension and potential, a silent promise that the era of secret deals and shadowed treachery was coming to an end. The broadcast had been only the first crack in a dam of repressed truths. Now, as Lenny slipped into an abandoned building in Broker, a forgotten relic repurposed as a communal safe haven, the air vibrated with the restless spirit of the insurgents gathered there. Inside the dim, humid space, clusters of devoted citizens huddled around scavenged monitors and repurposed software, coordinating their next moves. Their voices, hushed yet imbued with fierce determination, filled the dusty room as they plotted to seize control of pivotal communication hubs. Every whispered instruction and every coded signal was a calculated strike against the entrenched oligarchs who had ruled this city with an iron fist for far too long. Standing before a makeshift command center, a ramshackle alcove adorned with maps marked in bold red ink and pages of intercepted intelligence, Lenny exchanged a knowing look with Sasha, a once renowned street artist turned revolutionary organizer. Her eyes, reflecting the glow of battered computer screens, held the same fierce promise echoed in every rallying cry on the streets above. Together they reviewed the latest directives. Distract the security forces currently converging on the central broadcasting station near Middle Park East, and maintain the momentum of the leak until the final act of this unfolding power struggle. With every detail discussed, every contingency mapped out, the weight of the mission solidified into an unyielding resolve. Outside, Liberty City churned with an almost palpable urgency. Protests spilled out into the open like torrents reclaiming neglected space. In Hove Beach, the once serene boardwalk now thrummed with the energy of hundreds demanding accountability, their passionate slogans scrawled in bold letters on walls and storefronts. In stark contrast, the looming corporate towers of Algonquin flickered with uncertainty, as the citizens' newfound unity disrupted the relentless rhythm of profit and control. Sirens, shouts, and haphazard clashes blended into a citywide symphony, charged with the imminent potential for irreversible change. Lenny emerged from the safe haven into a chaos that was both terrifying and electrifying. Evading patrols with instinct honed by years of living on the razor's edge, he melded with the masses moving along narrow alleys and side streets. Every familiar landmark, the crumbling facades of old tenements in South Bohan, the faded murals in Broker, the stark lights that illuminated dark corners of Middle Park East, became symbols of resistance, each reflecting the communal desire to dismantle the old order. Amid the tumble of incandescent conflict and fervent protest, whispers of Operation Rebirth reverberated through the crowd like a battle hymn, binding together those who had once lived in complacent dread. As the day dawned, the city's heartbeat quickened. Lenny's eyes scanned the horizon, now painted in tentative hues of orange and purple, as he mentally reviewed the next phase of the plan. This phase was not a retreat but an advance, a deliberate act of reclaiming the narrative through direct action. Around him, rebel cells coordinated via encrypted channels, local militias, emboldened by the evidentiary onslaught that had raised. The veneer of elite control began storming key installations. The public broadcast that had rocked the city was merely the opening salvo of something far grander, a revolution fueled by the shared belief that everyone had a stake in the future. Moving through swirling mists of early daylight and dissipating rain, Lenny felt the undeniable weight of history bearing down on him. Each stride was an affirmation that the corrupt structures, built on decades of deceit, would crumble beneath the collective will of a rising community. The oppressive forces were mobilizing in response, a coordinated pushback ruthless and immediate, but the people had tasted the power of truth. Every mural, every hastily pasted poster, and every charged conversation in hushed tones was a declaration that Liberty City would no longer be held captive by the machinations of the few. In that charged atmosphere, with the resilient roar of protest echoing off brick and glass, Lenny pressed onward. His path through the torrential streets was interlaced with moments of peril and unexpected alliances, a testament to the city's paradoxical nature, a place where danger and opportunity wove together inextricably. Even as armored vehicles patrolled the avenues and the glare of floodlights turned over every stone, hope blazed in the eyes of the people. It was then, amid the tumult and rising clamor, that Lenny realized the revolution was intricately personal. No longer was it solely his mission to disseminate hidden truths. It was a rebellion born of shared tribulations, an uprising that promised to remake Liberty City into a bastion of liberation, justice, and new beginnings. With determination hardening each step, Lenny vanished into the pulsating heart of the street-level rebellion while orders, grievances, and aspirations converged to forge a single, unbreakable spirit. The evolution of Liberty City, in all its fractured glory, was just beginning, and every raindrop, every flicker of neon, and every defiant shout in the urban sprawl echoed that irreversible fact. Lenny pressed forward through the early chaos, his every step resonating with the reverberations of a city in upheaval. The morning light struggled to break through thick, lingering clouds while the streets of Liberty City pulsed with a frenetic energy born of defiance and renewed hope. The broadcast had been the spark, and now the flames licked at every corner, from the once slumbering avenues of South Bohan to the imposing facades of Algonquin's towers. Crowds swelled in the streets, their chants merging into a single rising roar that many believed could shatter decades of entrenched corruption. In whispered tones and hurried texts, rebel leaders coordinated next moves, plotting strikes against the symbols of power that had long strangled the city's potential. Navigating the maze of rain-drenched alleys, Lenny found himself skirting around pockets of organized militias and scattered groups of protesters. Each step was rife with tension. Hidden eyes watched from shadowed doorways. Armored vehicles trundled by with muffled purpose, searching for any sign of insurrection. And in the distance, the metallic clamor of an enraged counterforce reminded him that the established order was not relinquishing control without a fight. Amid the chaos, an encrypted message flashed across his burner phone. His trusted contact, Drake, reporting that a convoy of rebel reinforcements was en route to a pre-designated rendezvous near an old textile mill just outside Hove Beach. The message was curt but urgent, a call to regroup and harness the cumulative momentum of the uprising. Lenny made his way to the decrepit industrial compound, a sprawling complex that had once hummed with the work of a bygone era. Now, graffiti-tagged, walls and rusted framework bore witness to a new purpose, a makeshift headquarters for those determined to reclaim their city. Inside a dimly lit hangar, a motley assembly of citizens, from exiled academics and jaded former enforcers to passionate school teachers turned activists, gathered around hastily assembled communication arrays. Among them was Sasha, his longtime confidant whose fierce eyes belied a heart hardened by years of disillusionment. In hushed, fervent discussion, they plotted their next phase, a plan to hijack a secondary broadcast relay situated at the central government building. The tactic was audacious, designed to channel the surge of revolutionary fervor into a message that resonated far beyond Liberty City's borders, inspiring others to challenge their own oppressors. As plans solidified, Lenny slipped away with determined stealth once again. The chill in the air sharpened his senses as he navigated the labyrinth of industrial backroads and deserted thoroughfares. Every step took him closer to the government district, a bastion of polished marble and corporate neon that now sat precariously atop a simmering cauldron of public defiance. With his mind racing over contingencies, he recalled every whispered, warning and each rallying cry echoing through the darkened corners of the city. The people had tasted the promise of unbridled truth, and now the desire for a genuine transformation pulsed like a heartbeat beneath corrupted veneers. Stealing through narrow corridors and abandoned service entrances, Lenny reached the fringes of the government center as the day advanced. The scale of resistance was staggering. Demonstrators had gathered en masse, their conviction forging a collective spirit that the old regime could no longer ignore. Overhead, a haze of protest banners fluttered against a sky tinted with the muted hues of dawn, while hurried scribbles of revolutionary manifestos were plastered on every available surface. In that charged moment, suspended between the old order's trembling grasp and the uncertain promise of what might follow, Lenny felt the fierce, inexorable pull of destiny. The mission was no longer his alone, nor was it simply about revealing hidden truths. It had become an all-encompassing struggle for every soul in Liberty City. With the echoes of defiant chants guiding his path and every breath ignited by the possibility of change, Lenny stepped forward into the maelstrom, ready to play his part in the fierce, sprawling tapestry of rebellion that was rapidly reshaping his city. Lenny forged ahead, every step carrying him deeper into a conflict that had overtaken the city. The government center loomed ahead like a monolith of authority, its mirrored surfaces reflecting the tumult of a revolution in full swing. The cacophony of protest, synchronized chants, impassioned speeches over makeshift speakers, and the aggressive roar of impromptu percussion from repurposed items merged with the distant, methodical clatter of armored vehicles. Amid this sensory overload, Lenny's focus was unyielding. His mission was to breach the inner sanctum of the regime's stronghold and ensure that the voice of the people could no longer be silenced. As he neared the monumental building, Lenny melted into the shadows cast by towering columns and the sporadic glow of emergency lights. He recalled the hurried instructions from Drake. A narrow window of opportunity had opened, a brief lapse in the security grid that he could exploit. Moving with a silent, practiced grace honed by years of skirting danger, he slipped onto a side street adjacent to the building. Here the architecture was less imposing. Aging brick walls and side entrances that had long been forgotten by routine patrols served as his clandestine entry points. Every sense was on high alert. A stray footstep or an unexpected gaze could unravel his carefully laid plans. Navigating the darkened corridor that led behind the governmental compound, Lenny encountered the first tangible threat. A pair of security guards stationed near a rusted service door, their flashlights sweeping methodically across the walls. Heart pounding, he slowed his pace to blend with the ambient shadows. In a heartbeat that stretched for eternity, he calculated the necessary distance and pressed himself low against the wall until the guard's beams passed harmlessly by. Only then did he edge forward, every movement measured and deliberate, as if the very darkness were an extension of his will. Inside, the corridor was a sterile labyrinth of fluorescent lights and silent, humming machinery. A stark contrast to the raw, pulsating energy outside. The oppressive silence was punctuated by the periodic clack of distant keyboards and the low murmur of radios, reminders of the bureaucracy that maintained the city's fractured order. Lenny's objective lay further ahead, a secured control room that monitored communication networks and broadcast directives to the obedient masses. Taking cover behind a row of maintenance lockers, he produced a slim, custom-built device designed to interface with the building's system. Its screen lit up with strings of encrypted code, reflecting Lenny's urgent concentration as he began to override local security protocols. In that moment, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor, a patrol no doubt, drawn by the growing unrest outside. Lenny's fingers flew across the device's keys, bypassing layers of encryption, while his heart hammered in his chest. The device's soft beeps and rapid flashes provided the only soundtrack to this clandestine operation. He knew that time was as much an enemy as the guards now patrolling nearby. With a final flourish of decrypted commands, the device sent a silent alert through the internal network, creating a temporary diversion. A fabricated alert that would pull security personnel in the opposite direction, away from his precise location. The diversion worked. In the ensuing moments of controlled chaos, Lenny bolted from his cover and pressed on down a narrow winding stairwell that descended deeper into the building's core. Each step was a marriage of adrenaline and resolve, the echo of his own footsteps blending with the distant clamor of displaced guards. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into a cramped maintenance corridor lined with exposed cables and humming servers. The air was thick with the hum of technology, and every sound was amplified in the tight space. Here, the heartbeat of the regime's communication system was laid bare, vulnerable and susceptible to the intervention of a determined insurgent. Lenny pressed his back against the cool metal of a support column as he connected his device to a concealed access port. The digital readouts began to stream across his screen, a veritable torrent of classified files spammed with the stamped signatures of high-ranking officials and corporate moguls. This was the evidence the people had been waiting for, the hidden manifesto of corruption that had for too long been buried beneath layers of deceit. His hands trembled slightly with anticipation, not from fear but from the exhilarating knowledge that with each file downloaded, the edifice of oppression was chipping away at its foundation. Outside, the momentum of the revolution was undeniable. Crowds surged through the government district. Protesters, once silent in their subjugation, now marched with an assertive unity, their collective energy transforming the air into a living, pulsating force. Drone footage, hijacked from official feeds, was now streaming the confrontation live, a stark, unfiltered look at the chaos behind once impenetrable walls. This digital coup was the turning point. The people, armed with truth, were beginning to reclaim their narrative. The control room's alarm eventually shrieked to life, a piercing sound that split the tense atmosphere like a knife. Security. Forces were converging, their footsteps heavy and their commands rapid. Lenny closed his device's cover and slipped the precious evidence deep into his jacket, knowing that his next move would dictate not only his survival, but the success of the entire movement. With a deep breath, he abandoned his covert post and retraced his steps through a maze of corridors that now pulsed with a frenetic urgency. Every door he passed, every darkened corner became a potential harbinger of capture. Yet his determination was laser-focused. The diversion he had engineered continued to hold back the bulk of the security detail, long enough for him to navigate the labyrinth. Each door that creaked open was both a risk and a reward, a chance to join the swelling tide of rebellion outside, or a trap laid by loyalists desperate to stem the rising flow of insurrection. Emerging once again into the cool pre-dawn air, Lenny blended with the throng of protesters surging toward the government center. The evidence, now safely in his possession, was the linchpin of a movement set to rewrite Liberty City's destiny. The streets reverberated with chants and the rousing beat of defiantly raised voices, in that charged convergence of chaos and hope. Lenny felt every battle scar, every long-forgotten dream of justice, fusing into a singular, unbreakable resolve. The revolution was no longer an abstract ideal. It was a tangible force, incarnate in every defiant shout and every determined stride taken across rain-soaked pavement. And as the armored vehicle's lights danced in the distance and the furious rhythms of government counterattacks intermingled with the resounding chorus of emancipation, Lenny knew that, tonight, the people of Liberty City were no longer voiceless. They had seized both truth and destiny with unwavering hands, and the old order was crumbling beneath a new world rising from its ruins. Lenny pressed forward into the heart of the urban maelstrom, every step reaffirming his commitment to a revolution that had burst wide open the doors of Liberty City's entrenched systems. With the stolen evidence warming his jacket against the chill of dawn, he navigated an ever-shifting labyrinth of back alleys and secret passageways that pulsed with the raw energy of defiance. The city, awakening to the revelation of its own corruption, was now a canvas painted in riotous hues of passion and resistance. Every graffiti-tagged wall, every battered storefront transformed from relics of decay into symbols of change, as if the very bricks sang in chorus with a people reborn. Stepping out from the relative safety of a hidden safe house behind an innocuous diner in Hove Beach, Lenny scanned the crowded street where protesters marched and clashed with the hushed security details of the old regime. The air was electric with urgency. The clamor of impassioned shouts, the rhythmic beat of drums created from salvaged metal objects, and the distant wail of sirens formed a dissonant symphony that promised both danger and an imminent shift in power. As he threaded his way through the throng, he observed the myriad faces around him. Each one bore the scars of oppression and the fiery determination to reclaim the future. In their eyes, Lenny recognized a shared hunger for justice, a collective will to defy the status quo. His path led him toward a derelict metro station that had been repurposed into an insurgent hub, a subterranean nerve center where coded messages and whispered strategies converged. The station's crumbling arches echoed with the footsteps of rebels and the quiet urgency of clandestine meetings. Here, under the flicker of a failing fluorescent light, makeshift maps and digital dashboards lay side by side, documenting the dynamic spread of the uprising. Vale, a former communications technician whose innovative mind had once worked for the very institutions they now sought to dismantle, huddled with a cadre of trusted revolutionaries. Together they reviewed fresh intel streaming in from across the city, secured nodes repurposed as broadcasting centers, command lines alight with anonymous grievances, and real-time updates on the mobilization of both protesters and governmental countermeasures. Lenny's mind raced as he absorbed the tactical briefing. Their next operation was as audacious as it was symbolic, a coordinated assault on key surveillance hubs that had long been tools of suppression. By commandeering these nodes, the insurgents would not only disrupt the regime's chokehold on information, but would also send a thunderous declaration that the people's eyes were now open to every deceit, every act of malfeasance. As plans were laid out in rapid, hushed exchanges punctuated by the tapping of keyboards and the scratch of markers on paper, Lenny felt the ever-growing weight of destiny settle over him. This operation, if successful, would decentralize the power that had kept Liberty City in a perpetual twilight of fear and control. Cloaked once again by the cover of early light and assisted by the diversion of scattered security forces, Lenny slipped out from the underground headquarters. The once muted air of rebellion now buzzed with the combined energy of a city in transformation. Moving deftly through side streets and Broker, he made his way toward a network of commandeered transit, tunnels that promised both rapid movement and anonymity. Every step was a high-wire act, an intricate balance between reaching his objective and evading a tightening net of patrols and surveillance cameras. In these hidden arteries, The scent of determination and the sound of hurried footsteps melded into a pervasive reminder that this was a battle fought not just with weapons, but with ideas, solidarity, and the sheer force of a collective will. As Lenny emerged along a deserted overpass near the central government district, the full scale of the conflict was laid bare before him. Massive crowds had gathered in plazas and along wide boulevards, their chants echoing off the glass facades of corporate towers and government edifices. The sound of improvised instruments, banging drums and strummed guitars, reverberated against the cityscape, blending grim resolve with the raw hope of transformation. Amid this tableau, armored vehicles and riot squads shuffled through streets once considered impenetrable, their presence a stark reminder that the powers of the old world still fought desperately to maintain their dominion. In that charged moment, as the city teetered on the brink of a decisive reckoning, Lenny activated a final encrypted communication on his portable device. His message was simple, yet potent. Truth is rising. It burst forth in a cascade that reached every rebel cell, every underground forum, and every flickering screen in the labyrinth of Liberty City. The declaration was both a rallying cry and a promise, a vow that the truth, now liberated from its digital prison, would be the beacon that guided a nation renegotiating its contract with power. With the encoded transmission dispatched, Lenny merged once again into the chaotic current of the street-level rebellion. Every shadow, every raindrop glimmering on cracked pavement, and every burst of impassioned song served as a reminder of the revolution's unstoppable momentum. He surged toward his rendezvous point, a repurposed factory in the heart of South Bohan that had become synonymous with the uprising's daring spirit. There he would confer with Mira, Sasha, Vale, and the others to orchestrate the next chapter in this unfolding saga. At the factory, the air was heavy with determination and the acrid scent of resistance. Makeshift screens displayed live feeds of government edicts being disrupted by the insurgents' own broadcasts, each pixel a testament to the reclaimed narrative of the people. Amid the organized chaos, impromptu councils formed, and strategies were redrawn with every new revelation. From the front lines, Lenny's arrival was met with nods of approval and grim smiles forged from shared hardship. Here, every battle had a cost, yet each sacrifice was a stepping stone toward a more transparent, just future. In that moment of collective solidarity, amid the murmurs of urgent strategy and the palpable heartbeat of hope, Lenny's eyes shone with the fire of conviction. The path he had chosen was perilous and unyielding, a test not only of his wits and courage, but of the very spirit that animated every insurgent, every protester, and every silent observer on a rain-drenched night. The revolution had swelled into something vast, something that could not be contained by the crumbling vestiges of a corrupt regime. And so, as the first definitive rays of the new day broke over the horizon, casting long, hopeful shadows onto the streets of Liberty City, Lenny stepped forward into a future wrought from the fragments of a broken past. His journey was far from over. Countless trials and unexpected alliances awaited. But in every stride he took, in every whispered word of defiance shared among the masses, the promise of transformation surged ever forward, a promise that, in the end, truth and justice would rise triumphant over oppression. The city trembled in the uneasy twilight between chaos and order. Every street and alley a silent drumbeat of resistance that pulsed through Liberty City's very bones. Lenny found himself at the threshold of not just a building, but of history itself. A moment when the fate of countless souls, dreams, and brutal truths hung in the balance. In the penultimate swell of the uprising, governmental forces were massing with a desperation born of fear, their shadowy convoys and armored patrols converging on the very heart of the rebellion. Meanwhile, the revolutionaries had coalesced around a single daring plan, a final push to seize the central broadcast facility, the nerve center through which corrupt lies had long been spun. Yet, in that charged atmosphere, Lenny felt both the weight of the past and the bright promise of an uncertain future. Winding his way through dim, rain-washed back streets that bore the scars of decades of neglect and oppression, Lenny moved with an urgency that belied the silent determination in his eyes. Every step was a deliberate act of defiance, a refusal to let fear smother the flicker of hope that had ignited in the hearts of ordinary citizens. In the subterranean corridors of a repurposed subway station turned command center, he had gathered intimate details of the enemy's latest maneuvers. With whispered exchanges and hurried digital exchanges, plans were laid out amid the hum of salvaged electronics. Precise maps showed the concentration of security forces near the government district, while live feeds from hijacked drones detailed the unfolding chaos above. Lenny's mind raced as he pieced together the puzzle with a fervor fueled by both duty and a personal longing for redemption, not just for himself, but for every soul silenced under the weight of tyranny. In the narrow confines of a crumbling building near South Bohan, rebel operatives, including Mira, Sasha, and Vale, reviewed the final details with grim focus. Their faces, illuminated by the weak flicker of a makeshift projector, were etched with determination and a deep weariness that came from years of struggle. Yet there was an unmistakable light in their eyes, a blazing certainty that this was the moment to turn the tide. Plans were shared with the urgency of whispered life-saving codes, coordinate simultaneously with several other cells scattered across the city, create distractions along key corridors, and in one coordinated, almost balletic maneuver, converge on the broadcast facility at precisely the moment when the regime's own forces were stretched thin. Every second had been meticulously calculated, knowing full well that one misstep could shatter the fragile coalition of hope that had taken root in these streets. As Lenny joined his comrades in a nondescript secure van parked inconspicuously along a rain-slicked boulevard, the atmosphere inside was thick with an electric mix of anxiety and resolve. The vehicle's interior buzzed with low conversations and the steady beep of encrypted messages. Outside, the sky was a patchwork of tumultuous dark clouds edging into the first fragile light of dawn, a visual metaphor for the struggle between the omnipresent gloom of systemic corruption and the emergent stubborn gleam of revolution. With every beat of his heart, Lenny felt the enormity of the impending confrontation tighten around him like a coil, each moment laced with the unspoken promise that nothing would ever be the same when the final battle raged. The van came to a stop a block away from the towering broadcast center, a slick modern edifice that served as the heartbeat of the regime's controlled narrative. Disembarking silently, Lenny and a small squad of specialists melted into the shadows, their movements synchronized in the language of survival, honed by years of evasion in this relentless city. The facility's imposing glass and steel exterior shimmered with an eerie calm, belying the storm of conflict about to break within its walls. As the team positioned itself at strategic points around the building, Lenny's thoughts turned inward for a moment. He recalled every sacrifice, every whispered promise of a better tomorrow, and every shattered dream of a city enslaved by lies. In that brief internal soliloquy, he found the strength to push forward, a resolute acceptance that to unlock the chains of oppression, one must sometimes trade freely in risk and blood. Under the cloak of pre-dawn shadows, the assault began. Explosions of smoke and splintered concrete signaled the rebels' arrival, perfectly timed diversions that threw the building's security protocols into disarray. Amid the ensuing chaos, a visceral eruption of shouts, clanging metal, and the relentless drumming of boots, Lenny led the charge through a weakened service entrance. Every step inside the corridor was a step into the lion's den. The stark, fluorescent-lit hallways reverberated with the shrill alerts of compromised systems and the frantic, echoing footsteps of overburdened guards. His team fanned out like shadows, each member playing a critical role, disabling cameras, jamming communications, and silently clearing a path toward the central control room where the regime's stranglehold on information was maintained. In the core of that facility, time seemed suspended as Lenny planted his custom device onto a hidden access panel, his fingers trembling not from fear, but from the weight of significance. The device worked its magic, cracking through layers of digital fortifications one code at a time, until the live feed of classified government secrets began to stream chaotically onto every screen. For a few brilliant, heart-stopping moments, Liberty City was united in shock and revelation as damning evidence spilled forth in torrents, a torrent destined to rewrite the narrative of power itself. But just as quickly as it had surged, the fragile calm fractured under the roar of counterattacking forces. Order and chaos collided in a visceral struggle, and the facility became a crucible where every lie ever told was met with the force of unyielding truth. Amid the maelstrom, Lenny fought through the disintegrating order of rubble and resistance, his focus unwavering even as the building's corridors were inundated with the reinforcements of the regime. Yet, he could feel the momentum of the people from every corner of Liberty City, the echo of the united chants, the defiant roar of protest broadcast over hijacked signals, and the distant yet persistent beat of what could be called a heartbeat of revolution, all converging on this singular point. His data transmission, the culmination of years of clandestine work and intimate sacrifice, was no longer just his burden. It had become the universal cry of those who had long suffered beneath the boot of the oppressor. Breathing heavily through a haze of smoke and sweat, Lenny made his way toward an alternate exit, where he rendezvoused with Mira and the others. The mission, though successful in its primary objective, had escalated into something larger than any one person's will. A rising tide of retribution that would soon haunt every darkened corner of the city. In the flickering light of smoldering debris and the distant clamor of uprising, Lenny knew that the final act was nearly upon them. The regime would retaliate with unprecedented force, and Liberty City, scarred and weary as it was, would be forced to choose between submission and the unyielding demand for justice. In that charged penultimate moment, as sirens wailed in the distance and the sound of clashing forces filled the air, Lenny allowed himself a brief, defiant smile. Amid the turmoil, the collective spirit of the revolution had found its voice, a voice that would soon culminate in a final, decisive confrontation. Every shattered window, every echo of resistance, every spark of courage that had been kindled in the shadows promised that change was inevitable. In the uncertainty of those fleeting moments before the final battle, Lenny and the insurgents held fast to the belief that the truth, once unleashed, would never be recaptured by those who had long profited from lies. And so, standing at the precipice of the final showdown, Lenny looked out over the city, a sprawling tapestry of defiance and hope, to silently vow that no matter the cost, Liberty City would rise from the ashes of oppression. The penultimate battle was over, and, The final act was about to begin. In the waning light of a battered, defiant city, the final confrontation unfurled like a storm, consuming every last vestige of the old order. The battered remains of the once mighty government center, now scarred and pockmarked from the relentless assault of a people awakened, served as both battleground and monument. For hours, Liberty City had been gripped by a frenetic intensity, a maelstrom of shattering explosions, desperate gunfire, and the echoing roar of unified protest. Now, as the acrid stench of burning concrete mingled with the cool, persistent patter of rain, the chaos began to coalesce into a resolution that could no longer be held at bay. Lenny stood amid the wreckage, his body marked by the violence of the night, yet his eyes burned with an unyielding spark of hope. Every drop of rain that fell seemed to wash away remnants of tyranny, revealing beneath layers of corruption and oppression the raw, unbreakable spirit of a people united in their quest for true freedom. Around him, the forces of the old regime, once formidable in their arrogance, crumbled like brittle facades under the relentless momentum of a revolution that had found its voice. The insurgents, battle-hardened and resolute, moved with a mixture of exhaustion and fierce satisfaction. They had laid bare the dark underbelly of power and ignited an irreversible chain of events that would reshape the destiny of every soul in Liberty City. In the heart of the shattered control room, amid flickering monitors that once projected carefully, constructed illusions of order and oversight, Lenny's stolen files and live broadcasts now played out for all to see. The damning evidence, streaming in uninterrupted cascades, revealed the hidden transactions, backroom deals, and endless cycles of greed that had fed the regime's surplus. It was as if the very air vibrated with the collective exhale of centuries of pent-up anger and betrayal, a purge that finally leveled the playing field. No longer shackled by silence or fear, the citizens, from the faded tenements of South Bohan to the gleaming towers of Algonquin, bore witness to an unvarnished truth that was as liberating as it was searing. Outside, the roar of the insurgent crowd rose to a feverish pitch. Thousands of voices melded into one resounding chorus of liberation, a chorus that echoed across deserted factory complexes, over rain-soaked bridges, and deep into the back streets where hope had long been a distant dream. The protest had swelled from a handful of determined rebels into a mass movement that galvanized not only the downtrodden, but also indifferent bystanders now compelled to join the uprising. Amid the fervor, banners declaring "Truth reigns" and "No more tyranny" waved triumphantly against the now unstoppable tide. In every outstretched hand, in every tear-streaked, resolute face, there was a profound acknowledgement that the death of one regime was the genesis of another way of being, a possibility once thought impossible. Within the inner sanctum of the broadcast center, as security alarms shrieked fruitlessly in the aftermath of a meticulously orchestrated digital coup, Mira, Sasha, Vale, and the others rallied together. They whispered in reverence about the cost of this victory, a toll marked by the sacrifices of countless friends and the heavy burdens borne by survivors of a long, bitter struggle. Yet, even as they mourned the fallen, there was an undeniable buoyancy to their spirit. They had not come to tear down without building up. They envisioned a future where Liberty City would become a beacon of transparency, equal opportunity, and shared prosperity. A city where the halls of power would forever remain accountable to the people. In that final cathartic moment, under an expanse of brooding clouds slowly softening against the first hesitant rays of dawn, Lenny allowed himself a moment of quiet introspection. He recalled the nights of clandestine meetings in smoky back rooms, the adrenaline-fueled escapes through rain-drenched alleyways, and the whispers of revolution that had ignited sparks in the darkest corners. Every scar on his body, every bruise and wound, told a story of struggle and sacrifice. And now, when the city's blood-red past was slowly yielding to the pale glow of renewal, his heart swelled with a promise, one that transcended fear and transcended the personal. This was not merely a battle concluded, it was a war of ideas, of integrity, and of a common will that had refused to be extinguished. The remnants of the regime, their defenses shattered and their command structures in disarray, retreated into the ruins of their former authority. In the spaces once dominated by sterile order and cold calculation, new institutions began to rise, fashioned by the very hands that had once felt so powerless. In the days that followed this final confrontation, Liberty City would embark on a painful yet hopeful journey of reconstruction, a rebuilding of community and trust in institutions designed by and for its people. The broadcasted truths became the foundation upon which a new civic dialogue was constructed, one that celebrated accountability, inclusiveness, and the boundless potential of a collective future. As the sun finally broke free from the haze, casting long, transformative shadows upon the rebuilding cityscape, Lenny stepped out from among the rebels into the bright, dew-dappled light of a new day. His eyes, once weary from the relentless struggle, now glimmered with the promise of renewal, of a city reborn from the ashes of its former self. The sprawling expanse of Liberty City, with all its scars and its hidden beauty, bore witness to the final act of a revolution that had, at long last, set the scales of justice into motion. It was a day that celebrated not just victory over oppression, but the enduring power of truth, solidarity, and the unyielding human spirit. In that everlasting moment, as every familiar street, every broken facade, and every flourishing mural testified to both the past and the possibilities of tomorrow, Liberty City stepped forward into history. The echoes of the rebellion would be etched into every brick, every whispered memory, and every hopeful glance toward the horizon. And though the journey ahead promised challenges yet unseen, the people, led by voices like Lenny's, had reclaimed not just their city, but their destiny. Thus, the final chapter of one era gave rise to the prologue of another, a time when the light of truth, though sometimes dimmed, burned eternally in the hearts of those who dared to dream of a better world. The revolution was complete, but its legacy would live on, inspiring generations to come to stand tall, speak out, and never again allow the shadows of dishonesty to obscure the path to freedom. Did you know we also have stories based on Vice City? Check out our channel to discover them. Now get out of here before I decide your wallet is worth more than our friendship.